Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Jonathan Brookfield and I'm a technical consultant at Diatech Group, proud platinum sponsor of the BIM Coordinators Summit 2023, stage 7. So with many technological offerings in the marketplace, what I wanted to talk to you about today is the need for strategy when implementing technology. A quick caveat. Due to limited time that we've got for today's session, I've cherry-picked some key topics. However, there are certainly more aspects that can be covered and aren't limited to what's contained within this presentation. So a quick summary of my experience and expertise. So my primary background has been working for engineering consultancies, predominantly in heavy civil engineering, specifically all things relating to water. My project portfolio ranges from both private and public sector projects in the UK, including working in UK government frameworks, to large maritime infrastructure projects spread across South America, Europe, the Middle East and Africa. I have had a passion for digital transformation from my early days in my career, when 3D modeling was simply still just a dream inside of civil engineering due to hardware and software constraints. I'm particularly interested in process and production management across the AEC sector and beyond, which is why I've chosen today's topic. We see digital transformation occur across all industries, be it banks and finance, retail, logistics, education, and our AEC sectors. There is, however, a poor success rate. 70% of all transformations fail. Now, for me, this doesn't come as a huge surprise, albeit a rather high statistic. We can see on the right-hand side here some key sources for that failure. In this presentation, we're going to delve deeper into these common points of failure and how these can be mitigated against via the use of strategy. So, as a starting point, too often we see putting technology first. A common misconception across all industries is we are implementing a piece of technology or software, when what we are really implementing is change. Technology is a part of a solution, but isn't a magic wand. It must be coupled with people and process to be a successful outcome. Here we have the 3 Ps of successful technology investment: people, process, and I must admit, the slightly tenuous, but I'm sure you get the point, is programs. Approaching investment with a holistic approach will ensure that you are likely to take people and process into account. Neither of these should be looked at with an internal lens, but should incorporate those interactions that happen outside of the organization. For example, if we were to invest in a cloud system, we will have our internal processes such as quality management systems. However, how are we to implement delivery mechanisms between ourselves and other parties? Does our system complement common client, cloud, or repository systems? Will external parties be able to access the data in a secure manner? All individuals are unique. Therefore, we'd be naive to think that everyone learns and understands technology in the same way. When we talk about investment in people, we also need to grapple with varying perspectives and opinions about change, which we'll go into in a bit more detail during this presentation. Frequent attempts to implement technology have too little or a complete absence of the change management process. I'm sure a lot of you will have seen this similar graphic depicting Kotter's 8-step change model. What I'd like to draw your attention to here is step 3, which is developing a vision. This is where an organization will need to begin developing their strategy. I'd also like to highlight steps 4 and 5 to get right, which is enlist. So communicating the strategy within the organization, and also empowering others to act. A place where I have seen technological implementation fail, even though they have had a strategy, was the siloing of how that strategy was developed. With this lack of collaboration and poor subsequent communication, it demonstrates a lack of empathy towards those of whom are going to be primarily affected by the change. This ultimately ends in failure. In my opinion, for the strategy to be a success, it must incorporate all 8 components and have a coherent plan of how to address each of them. Clear timeline and milestones. So technological advancement is generally an exponential improvement, but it is also circular, a cycle. Your strategy isn't. A strategy is linear with a defined start and end point. However, your business goals and values are unlikely to go through such a pace of transformation in contrast that you see with technology. Whatever the technology is that is being implemented, it must strategically link to overarching organizational goals or key performance indicators. By doing this, key stakeholders throughout an organization's hierarchy will buy into the change. Whilst we're discussing the subject of time, a need for strategy is looking beyond the present. If you try to implement a technological solution without a plan, you'll likely only be looking at the current situation or scenario. By developing a competent strategy, you will be looking ahead, and although you don't have a crystal ball, you will have at least attempted to figure out or future-proof your investment. Furthermore, a critical path needs to be established to extract the most value and identify what key activities or milestones are for realizing impactful outcomes. My colleague Robert Lakey will be going into this in more detail in his presentation later on this afternoon, so I highly recommend attending this if you can do so. So, fatigue is one of the most important points that I find when implementing strategy. So, fatigue occurs with little or no change management. When we talk about fatigue in this instance, we're not referring to a loss of momentum, stamina, or a slowdown in pace. What we're talking about here is a loss in value or a loss in value realization. Without clearly defined milestones, the further away we are from the implementation start date the more likely fatigue will set in. So, a way of countering fatigue is using a roadmap with achievable ambitions set within your digital strategy. For example, value perhaps isn't seen by those working on projects, however, is recognized at organizational level. Clear communication of strategy is important, but also clearly communicating the successes in the form of value helps to counteract the adverse effects from fatigue. Scalability can also have an effect on fatigue. Your implementation success is measured on outputted value. Big Bang or waterfall initiatives have far greater lead times, accepting the rewards are increased, but they are certainly more susceptible to fatigue. Therefore, targeting more frequent wins in your strategy will help mitigate against the impact of change fatigue. In this case, the phrase go big or go home, I'd say, isn't really relevant, especially when we're talking about digital strategies. Sorry, that's gone back. If I look back to when I was a BIM manager and reassess where technological implementation went wrong for me, one of the key items would be capacity. I'd look at capacity in terms of both resource availability and capability or skill set. This is where I see the need for strategy as imperative. As you'll be aware, organizations must balance business development activities against project or fee-generating tasks. This commonly means critical employees responsible for digital delivery become scarce. If the implementation doesn't have the connection to overarching organizational goals as identified by the strategy, resources will still quickly be pulled back into project teams, stifling that much needed innovation that the organization requires. Successful implementations need to be approached as internal projects where time and budget need to be monitored. Therefore, activities need to be forecasted and planned. Not only do these activities need to include aspects such as training, templates, documents for guidance and governance and so on, they need to include stress testing, piloting, verification and validation. This means that a strategy is a must, as suitable pilot projects need to be identified and agreed upon. We need to know that the technological solution is going to deliver the desired outcomes and that we are asking the right questions to ensure those outcomes are met. A strategy needs to deliver a return on investment and shouldn't be looked at as a cost if applied responsibly. A dirty word, particularly in my experience in engineering, outsourcing. A competent strategy will outline a process to identify internal skill gaps. Outsourcing may help plug those gaps in an organization has in its skills and capacity, but needs to be procured sensibly. Outsourcing can be financially savvy and efficient if approached correctly. Those coming into the business need to look to align with the organization's values and need to show empathy towards identified pain points. Like we discussed previously, our strategy is linear, and therefore outsourcing should be seen as a temporary fix as a means towards a longer-term solution. Keep knocking something. Ensure the outcomes you set in your strategy are smart. I'm sure you'll all be aware and familiar to this concept when developing a strategy. It is easy to forget these fundamentals when you're under pressure or time constrained. Whatever you communicate with the organization, the goals need to be clear, concise, and the value understood. The implementation must be measurable and therefore have specific metrics identified during tasks to be performed. They need to be achievable, specifically those quick wins demonstrating value. They need to connect to the overarching business goals and objectives, thus being relevant. And the strategy needs to have a start and a finish date, therefore being time-based. To finish, I'd like to summarize the key aspects that must be included when thinking about strategy alongside your technology implementation. Investment must contain both people and process alongside the technology. You are implementing change, therefore a change management process must accompany the technological embedment. Your strategy needs to have a destination. It mustn't be a never-ending cycle. Value must be realized throughout the duration of the implementation and felt broadly across the organization. This must also be sufficiently communicated. How your implementation is resourced is key, and don't be afraid to outsource if planned and procured properly. External ideas and concepts give you a broader outlook. It is healthy to look at something from outside your organizational bubble or even outside your organization's industry. Finally, your aims and ambitions need to be smart and must align to the organizational goals and company culture. In this presentation, we've merely scraped the surface when talking about digital strategy when implementing technology. If you'd like to find out more, please get in touch. At Diatech Group, our relationship with our customers is a trusted partner and advisor, helping you to achieve your organizational goals through the right solution and getting the most out of your investments using a broad range of industry, software, and consultancy experience. Thank you everyone for attending and enjoy the rest of your conference.